Welcome everyone, I'm so thrilled you're joining me for today's explainer because we're going to be tackling a statement that honestly sounds incredibly simple on the surface, but it's actually deeply fundamentally misunderstood when it comes to our modern health. It's something we hear literally all the time, right? And it gives us this kind of false sense of comfort. But the real truth behind it? Well, it's a story of incredible human achievement, a little bit of historical luck, and a massive modern paradox that we urgently need to confront together.
So here's the quote. We are healthier today than the people who lived 100 years ago. Now, on paper, that's a fact. We live longer, infant mortality is absolutely plummeted, and we routinely survive things that used to be guaranteed death sentences. But, and this is the hard truth that kind of shatters our modern egos, it is absolutely not because we're somehow physically stronger or superior to our ancestors. I mean, our DNA hasn't changed. It's not because we have way more personal discipline, and it's for sure not because we understand our own biology any better than they did.
So, what actually changed? Let's dive right into this, because the answer is really not what most people assume. To truly understand why you and I are sitting here today with the luxury of even anticipating old age, we have to take a little journey back in time. We need to completely strip away our modern comforts and uncover an answer that defies pretty much all our common assumptions about human evolution.
Let's start with part 1, the fragile reality of the early 1900s.
Okay, I want you to really visualize this with me. Step back to the early 1900s. Whether you are navigating the dense, smoggy streets of London, crammed into a tenement in New York, or walking the dusty roads of Lagos, your survival was shaped almost entirely by your environment. Think about it. Clean drinking water? That was a luxury, definitely not a universal right. Sewage systems were dangerously incomplete, meaning you had open waste right in the middle of these rapidly growing cities. Add in the fact that keeping food preserved was totally hit or miss, and you've got the perfect storm. It was an environment where infectious diseases could just rip through populations like wildfire. And critically, medicine back then didn't have any of the safety nets that we take completely for granted today. I'm talking no widespread antibiotics, no mass vaccination programs to protect communities, and there was absolutely zero culture of routine medical screening. What this actually meant on a daily basis is terrifying. A simple cut on your hand while working, a standard chest cold in the winter, or a complication during childbirth. These weren't just little bumps in the road. They escalated into fatal events, rapidly.
It's fascinating to look at the stark contrast globally, too. In many African regions, for instance, you had these deeply rooted traditional systems of care that offered real therapeutic value. But they were severely bottlenecked by massive structural limits, like a lack of hospitals and extreme rural isolation. The problem wasn't a lack of understanding, it was the inability to scale that care. Meanwhile, over in the Americas and Europe, rapid industrialization was creating a totally different nightmare. Urbanization was just completely outpacing infrastructure. This led to horribly overcrowded slums, contaminated water, and devastating epidemics. So really, no matter where you were in the world, human health was basically held hostage by infrastructural limits.
So the dominant health model of that entire era was what we call reactive survival. You didn't manage your health in advance. Nobody was doing that. There was literally zero concept of preventive screening or, monitoring your metabolic risks. You basically just went about your life and you responded only after a disaster struck. Survival was essentially a game of geographic roulette. It relied entirely on your local infrastructure, your timing, and whether or not you had access to care when things went south.
Moving on to part 2, the systems engineering revolution.
Then everything shifted. And like I said earlier, it wasn't because human biology miraculously leveled up. What actually saved us was the systems engineering revolution. Look at how this built up, layer by life-saving layer. First up, the sanitation revolution. Building clean water networks drastically cut down disease transmission. Then, step 2, vaccination systems came along, meaning entire categories of terrifying diseases, like polio and smallpox, were suddenly no longer inevitable. Step 3, the antibiotic era arrived, turning once fatal bacterial infections into something you could easily treat. And finally, step 4, structured public health systems gave us widespread maternal care and outbreak control. For the first time ever, prevention existed at a massive scale.
The absolute crucial takeaway here is this: systems began doing what individuals alone could not. We didn't suddenly become healthier because millions of people dramatically improved their personal habits. No way. We became healthier because collective engineering essentially wrapped an invisible protective shield around us. Clean water, sterile hospitals, community immunity. These were giant systemic triumphs, not individual ones.
Now part 3, the modern health paradox.
Okay, so while that engineering revolution was an absolute triumph, it didn't exactly hand us a problem-free utopian era of health. Check out the stark contrast between our past and our present. In the old health era, infectious diseases totally dominated. They spread externally from person to person, and they escalated incredibly fast. But look at today. The modern health era is dominated by chronic and lifestyle-driven conditions. We're talking hypertension, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. These don't spread externally. They accumulate internally, totally silently over a long period of time. So instead of a rapid escalation, the hallmark of our modern diseases is gradual, quiet progression.
What we're left with today is a really hard truth to swallow. We successfully engineered our way out of one major category of health threats, but in its place, a brand new category emerged. And here's the kicker. This new category depends almost entirely on our daily human behavior. Systems can purify the water you drink, and they can vaccinate you against a deadly virus, but systems cannot eat a balanced diet for you. They can't hit the gym for you, and they certainly can't make you show up for your annual blood work. That's all on us.
Which brings us to part 4, the real modern advantage.
This introduces the most critical asset that defines modern healthcare today. It's a superpower that our ancestors in 1910 would have literally begged for. And that superpower? It's time. Just let that sink in for a second. Time. Because modern chronic diseases progress so gradually over decades, we now possess the unprecedented time to detect a disease early. We have the time to map out its trajectory, and most importantly, we have the time to intervene years, sometimes decades before a medical crisis actually hits.
Yet, despite having this unbelievable gift of time, we're experiencing a massive modern behavioral failure. Human behavior is stubbornly, almost tragically, stuck right back in the reactive survival mode of the early 1900s. Think about it. We still wait for symptoms to show up before we finally seek help. We brush off early warning signs, telling ourselves we're just getting older or we're just stressed. We constantly delay routine medical screenings because we tell ourselves we're too busy. And maybe worst of all, we normalize a gradual physical decline. We just accept chronic fatigue and aches as inevitable, instead of investigating the actual root cause.
So we're living through this tragic collision right now. On one side, you have these incredible modern prevention systems. We have unprecedented medical visibility, advanced blood panels, imaging tech that can literally see inside our arteries with crystal clarity. But on the other side, we have ancient reactive human behavior, our sheer refusal to act until we're in agonizing pain. And the result of this clash? Completely preventable conditions are being discovered far, far too late. And that essentially negates the incredible medical progress we've made over the last 100 years.
We really have to wake up and realize that the true pinnacle of modern medicine isn't some magical pill or a futuristic sci-fi cure. The true advantage is actually a simple 3-step process: earlier visibility, earlier detection, and earlier correction. The real power is in seeing that slight, tiny elevation in your blood sugar, detecting your rising blood pressure, and then correcting it through lifestyle changes or early intervention well before it ever becomes a stroke or a heart attack. That right there is the true triumph of modern health.
You know, our ancestors didn't have a choice. They usually only discovered an illness when it was already advanced, when it was already way too late. But today, you and I have the profound ability to see illness coming from miles and miles away. Yet so many of us still close our eyes and put off taking action. So as we wrap up this explainer, the real question we need to ask ourselves isn't whether we're healthier than the people who came before us. The question you really need to answer for your own life is, are we actually using the advantage that history has given us? Thank you so much for joining me today. Take a moment to really think about that, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.